Alright, so I guess we are just jumping right on into it. Hello everybody, Allie here, and welcome to the Gold Mine. Thank you for joining me here on another episode at Allie's Treasure Trove. Today we are getting into episode number 12, and trial part 2 here of episode number 4 in the game. So I believe last episode we ended off finding out that we will need to do another summation examination of the jury. Did have these two witnesses. You guys saw the backs of their renderings. I want to say sprites because I'm used to Ace Attorney not having 3D models, but this is the third game, or actually the second, depending on the actual order of Japanese release, that has the 3D models. So I don't know why my head's stuck on sprites, but I'm just used to my Ace Attorney games having sprites. But yes, we saw that couple there, Rolly Beats and Patricia Beats, and they claim to have seen 100% Natsume-san at the scene, and they also testified, about the books, and Patricia kind of, sort of, but not really remembered the names of the books found at the scene. We also discovered there is a fourth book, that burnt up piece of the Lion's Pride from episode, I think, number 10 or so here on the channel, the investigation part 2 here in episode 4, where Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab got into that fight, the little spat there. Well, he didn't really fight back. She slapped him because she found that little note, the little love note hidden in one of his books, and it burnt some of his books and somehow landed outside, where apparently these events are supposed to have happened at the exact same time. So how did that Lion's Pride book end up in the hand of the victim? Why is she still unconscious from just getting stabbed in the back? I mean, yes, that's got to be traumatic, but why are you unconscious for 3 going on 4 days here? I really don't know. So we're going to be turning the tide here, trying to convince the jury that the trial should continue. You guys shouldn't just go ahead and say guilty just quite yet. So here we go. What does the judge have to say? I have considered the defense counsel's request for further summation examination of the jury, and I have determined that the court must uphold the defense's judicial right to this procedure. Alright, so the judge says yes. So, counsel, you will now proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready, Mr. Foreman? Ah, yes, and the jury is not impartial whatsoever. Actually, Mrs. Gharadab, posing as the maid, is on the jury, and also this Mr. Fairplay here from the McGilded trial, so totally fair and impartial jury. They haven't continuously talked about how much they dislike us or anything like that. Nope, not at all. But we are, my lord. Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely for the court the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty of this crime. And it's odd, this is like our first not actual murder trial, I think, in the entire series. It's just attempted murder, so close enough. But it's really curious as to what's going on here. I have not really a theory, except maybe that these beat characters might have fudged the scene a bit. That's about all I got. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his? If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Maybe Mrs. Gharadab just threw a knife out the window and it landed in her back. I have no idea. I mean, that actually could be a possibility here. Who knows? Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window was closed, what, can it? Dearie me, it was only a little book, hardly life-threatening even with a direct hit. Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a tiny bit of trouble. Come to think of it, we had a fire at home a while ago. Gave me the sneezes. That's a great reason to vote guilty. Old man number 6. Good job. Yes, considerably more tangible arguments from all the members of the jury this time around, it seems. I mean, they were pretty horrible the first time. With one notable exception, of course. My learned student friend was unable to find fault in the previous witness testimony. So the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing the scene of the crime. And moreover, no one else was even at the scene to commit the crime. Well, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusion is somewhat set in stone. Yeah, except that the eyewitnesses were at the scene of the crime. You know, they were there too. I don't know, I'm just saying.
I failed to see how it could be argued any other way.
That means I'm afraid that during this summation examination, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation for the facts.
But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation here? Isn't it obvious? Who stabbed the woman, and how? Those two details are all you need to provide. Simply give us a name and a method by which the attack was conducted. I say Mrs. Gharadab yeeted a knife out the window. And there I was, thinking this might be hard. Wow, you solved all my problems, Barack. Thank you. Thank you.
But Mr. Naruhodo, you have to do it, otherwise this will really be where the trial ends.
No pressure then.
That's quite enough preamble. Proceed with the summation examination, please. I presume you are prepared, counsel?
Oh, yes, my lord. All right, Ryunosuke, focus your mind now. Gotta get them slaps in. Clearly, the key to this summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid. Or should I say, Mrs. Gharadab.
We have a book that disappeared from the Gharadab's house on the evening of the incident, and the 4th book found in the victim's hand.
There must be a way to link the two.
Yes.
Oh, yes, that's what we have to find. Using every technique I've learned in my short career so far, whatever it takes.
Don't forget to keep an eye on Miss Gharadab and how she reacts, even to the things other people say.
Oh, so it's going to be a pursuit. Be a pursuit here. The defense's rebuttal. All right, what do we have? What we gotta do is we gotta press.
Hold it!
But as we now know, there were 4 books, not 3. Well, what difference does it make? Alright, let's look around. She has literally nothing. Alright, let's go back. There's every possibility that the 4th book, in fact, belongs to the defendant's landlord. Yes, that's the part I have a problem with. Sorry? Well, at the point the woman was stabbed, his landlord fellow was at home, wasn't he? Enjoying a fiery scrap with his wife or something, you said? That's not exactly how I put it, no. Well, anyway, the point is, the fellow and his wife were somewhere else when it happened.
I think that's what you call a strong alibi.
So it couldn't have been the landlord who did it, which only leaves the Nipponese fellow. From what I've noticed is other times that someone has a reaction, it notifies, like down here. So hopefully it does again, and I don't have to keep going over to Mrs. Gharadab every single time. Honestly, I can't see what all this palaver's about. It's a done deal, isn't it? I suppose it is, since I have nothing witty left to say. The necklace lady.
There was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed that might reconsider.
Hold it!
So, you might be willing to change your decision, you mean?
Oh my, such delight on your face, but I'm afraid I shan't be swayed by emotion. Despite what you may think of me, I'm a very modern, metropolitan, and rational woman.
Yes, that's why you have fastened your outfit so tightly that your neck shrunk. That's great! Congrats on being modern, metropolitan, and rational.
If one reads the morning papers, it's all forgotten by tea time, isn't it? So why read them in the first place?
Oh. So modern.
You see? Modern, metropolitan, and rational thinking, wouldn't you say?
This is the equivalent. I do this a lot, to be fair, but the equivalent of someone that only reads news story headlines and be like, yep, I'm knowledgeable about world happenings, totally, 100%. And it doesn't read the article. No context required. Modern, metropolitan, and rational.
As I see it, an overwhelmingly suspicious Japanese man has been implicated by overwhelming strong testimony. So despite one or two minor puzzlements, I do declare that man is overwhelmingly guilty. Modern, metropolitan, and rational logic, wouldn't you say?
Overwhelmingly.
But us modern gals are always delighted to embrace new fads, you know? So I'd be only too happy to consider an exciting new theory if you could come up with one.
Yeah, Miss Gharadab yeeted a knife out the window. That's what I'm going with now. I don't like her. I'd be happy to do that too, if only I could.
Let's do our very best not to disappoint the modern and metropolitan young lady.
Right. I'm glad you admitted rational there. I like this juror, though. This juror, I feel like, is the only one that actually has a functional brain. Even though he looks like Archie, right? Is that not old, but the comic, right? I have to ask my mom. My mom read that back in the day. I don't know if I'm thinking of the right character, but if not Archie, then a character from Archie, if I had to say. All right, let's, I think it could be related. I think it could be very related. But what about the possibility that the window was open? What about it? I mean, there's just no way it could have been. They would have died from... wouldn't they have died from suffocation? Right? I mean, where did all the smoke go? It's not like their house, the walls were black from the smoke just chilling. Like, I don't feel like the window had to be open. How can you be so sure? Prosecutor fellow over there said it earlier, didn't he? Winters in London are no joke. You don't want to invite that sort of cold indoors. So no, that window wasn't open. Us Londoners like sitting by the fire and staying warm, you see. They were a little bit too warm in there. But you couldn't categorically state that the window wasn't open, could you? It just wasn't. They wouldn't have opened it. Then what's the point of even having windows, huh?
Counsel, you will kindly refrain from childish bickering.
Oh, sorry. Somehow, I need to show there is undeniable possibility that the window was open. Because this young man isn't going to budge otherwise. Let's just ask Miss Gharadab. Yo, was the window open?
Dearie me, it was only a little book. Hardly life-threatening, even with a direct hit.
Hold it!
Yeah, but what if you threw other stuff out of the window? But the little book was on fire at the time, was it not?
With flames of love, I'll have you know.
There's really no such thing as a loving incendiary bomb.
Well, he brought it upon himself. He's playing with fire to betray a fiery love. Isn't it? Well, don't you agree?
Oh, well, any kind of betrayal is certainly a bad thing, yes. But I think the argument might have arisen out of your misunderstanding, Mrs. Gharadab.
I'm not Miss Gharadab. Never you mind that. The point is, we were just having a jovial little dispute, nothing more.
Okay.
Now I won't have any more of these suggestions that it was anything whatsoever to do with this crime.
You know, from what we've seen in this game, you know, the beats, currently, well, we're on the stand now, but they were just previously on the stand. And the Gharadabs, it's a lot of domestic violence. Raleigh's getting choked out every time she tries to wake him up. She's like, isn't that right, sweetie? And then chokes him out, and he's like, oh, yes, I love you. Please let me rest. I'm exhausted. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I was on board for a little bit. With Miss Gharadab. She's like, if you get a love note, slap him. But it's like, you know, he has a really good point that it literally wasn't even addressed to him. So that's like, you don't even know what your husband's name is? What's wrong with you? He doesn't seem to be turning a hair at Mrs. Gharadab's relentless onslaughts.
It's almost as though he's used to it.
Capcom wants us to let us know that late 1800s Britain was filled with domestic violence, apparently. He's just used to getting slapped by someone, some grill. But, Jesus. Oh, let me take a nice drink here. I normally wouldn't have to announce it, but I do have this pop filter I'm using during this episode, but it doesn't clamp, so I've been physically holding it. So let me know if things are sounding better than usual, or if you don't hear a difference. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be looking for, but we'll see. Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a tiny bit of trouble.
Hold it!
You just want to get this over with? How can you sit there and say something like that? A man's future is at stake here. Mine too. Well, him and me both then, like I said before. What? I told you already, I'm a day laborer, aren't I? If I don't bring home some readies with me tonight, You'll find me floating face down in the Thames tomorrow morning. What? You heard me. My missus isn't one to mess about, you know. She could be fierce. You believe me? Another shining example of marital bliss, then. See, Ryunosuke is picking up on what I'm saying. Situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, well, you know, it's funny, but I can't quite remember. Sorry? It was too frightening, that's the thing. I must have blocked it out. Helpful.
Wonder if Mr. B will ever be dragged into the Thames by his scarf.
Susanto knows what I'm talking about, too. Don't even go there, Miss Susanto. There must be some way to jog his memory about this. This old man.
Hold it!
Does that have anything to do with your decision about the defendant's culpability in this case?
Sorry, what's that? You'll have to speak up, lad.
Could you tell us more about that fire?
It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday. Had 75 candles on the top, it did. What a sight to behold it was.
That's a pretty high life expectancy for... I've heard that life expectancy in olden times was actually not as bad as the averages would lead you to think, just because kids would die, like, very, very quickly. So, like, yeah, if your average age is 36, it's like, well, you got a bunch of 1-year-olds that don't make it. So it's actually not that bad. It's just the average looks bad out of context. That's something that I'd like to look into more. I don't know too much about that. Wait. I thought I'd read the Ryunosuke part, but... Oh, you put candles on the cake? Is that some sort of devil worship? Ah, yes, customs that he does not understand.
Of course not. It was an angel cake. To celebrate my birthday, obviously.
It seems that's a common custom here in Great Britain, Mr. Naruto.
Anyway, I mustered all my puff to blow them out. Only I must have blown wrong somehow. Flames didn't go out, but candles went flying all over the room. Furniture caught and everything went up. Whole place filled with smoke.
Definitely sounds like devil worship to me. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold? But how'd you catch a cold from a fire?
Oh, well, we had to open the window.
Duh. Right? Alright.
What a fiasco it was. Grandchildren blessed them threw water over me as they tried to put out the flames. And then, because the whole room had filled up with smoke, of course, we had to open all the windows.
Yeah, called it. The windows?
The biting winter air rushed over me like the devil dancing on my grave, it did. Caught a terrible cold from it. Put me in the hospital for a while. Won't forget that birthday in a hurry.
I knew it was devil worship all along. But something about this old man's story is playing on my mind for some reason. Yeah, like how the Gharadabs would have been suffocated if they didn't open the windows, something like that.
We need to demonstrate who, apart from Mr. Natsume, could have attacked the young woman on the street, as well as how he or she could have done it.
Yes, but once again, the jurors' statements are full of personal prejudice. A lot of them seem convinced they're right, even in the face of logical arguments to the contrary.
I think you're going to need to pit them against each other to force them to accept an alternative explanation.
Yes. I don't necessarily need to find contradictions between their assertions, just a connection might do the trick. Alright, I'll see what I can do. If anything stands out, I'll go in for a strike.
That's the spirit!
Alright, so we're gonna pit whoever said the window can't be open, which I think is Archie. Alright, pit against Mr. Ancient.
Objection!
Music stopped, that means we're on to something. These two jurors' statements clearly contradict one another.
They do? How exactly, counsel?
Don't point at me again, I told you it wasn't me! Huh? What's that you say? Speak up, lad, speak up! I like how I alternate between like, hi, I can't hear you, old man voice, to what? Juror number 3, do you see? Clearly now the rain is gone. Oh, me? See what, sir? Did you hear juror number 6's account of his birthday celebrations last year? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he once opened his windows in the middle of winter. Well, yes, of course, because it was an emergency. I mean, obviously, if the room was filled with smoke from a fire, then you'd be mad not to open the window. Oh! Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Gharadab household, and Mr. Gharadab had the following to say about it. The whole place filled with smoke. Oh my head! What you got to say? You got something to say? Huh?
Excuse me.
Excuse me? You have something to say about that, juror number 4? Oh, she knows how to pour tea. She knows how to do it now. Excuse me? This is Gharadab.
How dare me? What's the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am?
It's imperative that you confirm something for the court. So please, it's time to drop the pretense now.
What is it?
When the fire started in your house that day, did your husband open the window?
What? I beg your pardon? What are you insinuating?
The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase caught fire as they did. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't have opened the window.
Inconceivable! And what if we did? Oh, all right then. Yes, you're right. My husband was frantically trying to open the window, which just can't have been easy since I continued to give him a justly deserved book battering.
Even though your house was on fire?
Oh, you never stop throwing until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do otherwise.
I think you need counseling. We're seeing a need for a lot of couples counseling here. Of course, I should have realized. Duh, easy.
That's a significant step forward, Mr. Naruhodo. You've managed to establish that the window was open. We simply must have added to Mrs. Gharadab's formal statement.
All right. No, I don't want to pit that yet. I'm gonna press. Let's press that. What were you throwing at him? The 4th book, found at the scene of the crime, shows very obvious signs of fire damage. In the title of the book, the line is The Lion's Pride. The same title, in fact, as the book that Mr. Gharadab told us he had been reading. So my question is, you guys in the comments let me know, did Natsume say that when the lady collapsed that she had the knife in her back already? Because I feel like he did, but if she didn't, literally could have just melted because the book obviously didn't burn all the way to a crisp, so it hit the snow, and then it stopped. You know, the fire went out because the snow melted. I'm assuming that's how that would work. Couldn't she just slipped and fell, and that's why she's unconscious, because she has a concussion? But then how did she get stabbed? Maybe the beats stabbed her. Like I said, maybe it's some kind of... Maybe they're doing it for like a good Samaritan reward or something. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I really couldn't say.
On the day in question, did you or did you not throw at your husband the copy of The Lion Pride that he had been reading?
I did. It was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I hurled it straight at him. Now you come to mention it, yes. He was rather enjoying reading it, you're right.
Why did you not reveal this information to the court from the outset?
Because I couldn't, you insolent little man. I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick and throw up whatever you could lay your hands on, as well as you know.
No, I don't know. I really don't know.
I barely noticed I was throwing a book, much less the title of it.
Oh. Hey, you remembered something. Hey, slow. Remember when your wife beat you up too? What is it, juror number 5? You know something? I remember what it was. That memory I had blocked out. Huh. And was listening to what this granny was saying. It brought it all flooding back.
Who are you calling a granny, you cheeky devil? I'm Mrs. Gharadab, or the maid, I'll have you know.
Man doesn't even flinch. Please tell me that's not because he's so used to being hit all the time. See? Ryunosuke only knows about loving, non-toxic relationships. It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just got back home after work, like. Hold on, time for... I like bottled Diet Dr. Pepper better than cans. Yeah, I've been having a hard time finding the mini cans anyways. I actually found bottles, so I still have a couple mini cans, but I've been enjoying bottles. Context for this is I need the extra 5 seconds to unscrew the top. Anyways, let me take my drink. I put my hand in my pocket for the wages I just earned that day, and I nearly died. They were gone. There was a hole. Every last penny dropped out. Or was it Gina Lestrade? Full circle. Gina is the evil supervillain of The Great Ace Attorney, Volume 1. Oh dear, what a disaster. You haven't heard the half of it, boy. Oh. The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. Oh. I could hardly get the words out, but I told her straight. I've lost a day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whistling past my ear, or stuck into the wall next to me. It did, about an inch deep. Bruh. Just, no words. Just terror. Just terror. Yeah, these people need, like I said, couples counseling. Yo, I should just get a psychology degree, become a counselor, and then invent a time machine, and just make a bunch of money. Go back. Go back. Be like, hey, maybe y'all should just not do that. Let's express our feelings without throwing things. You almost got stabbed, then would have actually gotten salmonella as well. That would have been very unfortunate. I could smell it then, you know, the god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was going to end up face down in the muddy banks that night, I can tell you. Now, that's a real disaster, isn't it? And I'll never use the word lightly again. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this. When women lose their rag, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchets, hammers, you name it. Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't think that all women are so short-tempered and unrefined, says the one who Susato take down me on a boat. No, I wasn't thinking that. Not at all.
Throwing household objects at people is, well, it's so uncivilized. At least attack with honor, using a bow or the like.
Excuse me? What? Attack? Who are you going to attack?
Never mind. Anyway, this man's words could be rather significant, I think.
Alright, we'll come back to the bow and arrow thing later, if I dare. Yo, let's just throw Miss Gharadab under the bus and pit him against Juror 2. Be like, maybe the knife got yeeted out the window. Pit. Yo! There we go. Those two statements clearly have a deeply significant connection. I'm not even tired. It's only 6:50 in the afternoon. Why am I reading worse than days I record at 2 a.m.? I don't know.
Good grief. You mean they don't contradict each other? Explain, counsel, at once. I thought we were looking for contradictions.
Juror number 2, do you think perhaps that this could be one such novel alternative, Mrs.
Modern, metropolitan, and rational. Oh my god, I have no neck. I'm so modern. Oh my, whatever do you mean?
An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back. What are you talking about? We've demonstrated that the fourth book, The Lion's Pride, that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Mr. Gharadab's room on the top floor of his house. Therefore, it's equally possible that some other object besides the book could have found its way from the Gharadab household to the street below.
Eh, what's that now?
After all, Mrs. Gharadab could have thrown any number of different objects at her husband. Isn't that right, juror number 4?
What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole?
Unless I'm missing some, like, weird connotation to this I don't understand. Miss Soul Rock over here is being like, what are you doing, you little skinny boy? Skinny boy? It's like... I'm beginning to think that ever since the true origins of this book came to light, perhaps she's had a feeling this might be what happens. Now you listen here, your East Gala. As the foreman of this jury, I demand a straight answer. You give us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house, but what? What was it? Bro, you got ears? A kniff, obviously. Really taking a big gamble here. That was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't had any real evidence to back it up. but I'm certain that at the very least this warrants further investigation. Alright, Mr. Foreman, I'll try to explain the defense's theory. The other object that found its way from the Gharadab household to the scene of the crime was...
Take that!
Juror number 4, Mrs. Gharadab. What? What now? I must apologize in advance for this, but I need you to confirm something else for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before? Ah!
Good Lord, Counsel, what on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was lodged into the victim's back, man.
My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab were in the throes of an argument. Mrs. Gharadab was hurling anything she could at her husband, who had been backed up against the window. A window that had been opened to clear the smoke, and through which a book sailed to land at this crime scene. You can't seriously believe that? The book was found in the victim's grasp! Are you saying that it flew out of the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand? Huh? Even my missus ain't got a name like that. Yes, I admit, there are many details we don't yet understand. But that's the point. That's precisely why we must not allow this trial to end. Not right now. Oh my! Ah! Mrs. Gharadab, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not? Oh! Ah! She has seen the knife.
My lord!
I wish to change my decision. I'm a woman of my word, after all.
Thank you, madam. Yes, I agree. I certainly didn't see this coming, but I just don't think it would be right for this trial to come to an end now with so many unanswered questions. Like, that's the thing. That's the thing that's weird about the jury, is they're making them vote guilty or not guilty, and it's like, well, I don't think he's innocent, but there's a lot of questions we shouldn't give up, so I guess I have to change my current vote to innocent, so that way we can learn more and keep the trial going, but I don't know if he's innocent. I don't like that they have to pick, but, I mean, for game mechanics-wise, like, that's what has to happen. I definitely like this jury a lot more, though, than the first jury, although I'm surprised that Bruce Fairplay here is giving us a chance, because, I mean, we went through the exploring all avenues possible route with him, and it ended up with him being accused of murder because of forged evidence by McGilded or Gina or somebody else, or multiple other people. So, but he gets it, I guess. I guess he gets it. I'd have to agree. Not that I think the granny did it, mind.
Yes, you know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either. All together now, ladies and gents.
Like, I find it oddly convenient that the knife was in her back. And the book, like, I don't know, like, did the book melt, and did the belt melt the snow and she slipped and then they framed the murder? I don't know. We did it.
Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo.
So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, number of jurors' leanings have changed. 2 jurors called guilty against 4 now calling innocent. Accordingly, the opinion of this court is divided, and this trial will continue. Now then, Lord Van Zeeks, how does the prosecution wish to proceed?
The prosecution requests to get drunk and then break my chalice. This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. I drink, then I throw. Those are my personality traits. Like a corked wine, the first few sips are bitter enough.
Yay!
But what follows is so repugnant, it's good for nothing save the gutter. I drink wine even though I don't like it to be very modern and metropolitan and rational.
If I may, Lord Van Zeeks, the defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation for what happened.
credible. Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? The defense's argument is a joke to which I barely know how to respond. But let me start by insisting that you must all familiarize yourselves better with the relative positions of those places being discussed. What do you mean by that? What's his angle this time? It was across the street. It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Gharadab household runs a rather wide street, Briar Road. Which means that the distance from the Gharadab's house to the scene is some, 15 yards.
Let me see. 15 yards. That's around 14 meters.
14 meters? Hey, Susato, can you put that in American, please? Oh, that's a little farther than I imagined. That's what, 45 feet? Right? Times 3? Or yard times 3? Whatever. And, as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted as having portentous significance, the fourth book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book wantonly hurled by the lady of the house traveled some 15 yards to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly between the collapsed victim's fingers and thumb. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend? And did the jackknife follow a near identical trajectory to plunge into the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day for the victim, I think. Even those pathetic serialized detective stories have more believable plots.
Whoa. Excuse me, Mr. Van Zeeks, but that's the creative writing and truthful stories of Mr. Herlock Sholmes, and I get them all the way imported to Japan to read them because those are fine literature. And I don't appreciate you attacking Mr. Sholmes. He is our friend, and he's a little weird. He sounds like a frog. He sounds like a Muppet, but that's very rude.
Thank you, Susato. Thank you. There's nothing I can say to that.
That prosecutor loves the sound of his own voice!
Mrs. Sato.
Serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he!
Maybe let's pick our battles here.
No! He's insulting! He's insulting my idol! My lord, might I be allowed to speak?
As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense. Yes, go ahead.
The prosecution may consider the idea of fantasy, but what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leading. And as such, the court has a duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. To that end, juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Gharadab, must be called to testify and submit to the cross-examination.
Saints alive! Cross-examination of a juror.
Can we just let that man sit down so he can sleep?
Order! Well, this is highly irregular. It is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned to the witness stand.
Objection!
And unnecessary.
Lord Van Zeeks.
There are already witnesses in the stand whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. If my learned friend's farcical theory has any truth in it, then both a burning book and a jackknife must have flown through the sky before this couple's eyes. And we must assume that they would be able to testify accordingly.
What say you, witnesses?
Yes, sir! Constable Raleigh Beat reporting for duty, sir!
Well, good morning, officer.
Sorry for dozing until now, sir! I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beat, sir! Oh, they're so heroic, these London bobbies! Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more! Oh, Raleigh, my hero, you make me swoon! Oh, Raleigh, you're so good at your job of sleeping all the time.
Very well, I hereby reject the defense's request.
Oh.
And order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. state forthwith before the court any details pertaining to the defense's alternative explanation of events.
Yes, sir! Why is he chewing on his helmet strap?
This case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab. Believe me, a London Bobby is good for his word. You see, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Gharadab house are top-hinged casements.
Obviously, if anything had been thrown out of the window, we would have seen it. I did leave the scene to go and fetch help, but my trusty Raleigh was there to make sure nothing was disturbed.
I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on that front, sir.
Oh my god, Raleigh, you're so good at saying so.
Well, this is quite startling. Top-hinged casement windows.
That detail was not in the police report, Constable.
Yes, sorry about that. I must have been a little drowsy.
You cannot excuse your sins with drowsiness every time, Constable.
No, sir.
Sorry, but, what's a top-hinge window? It's a good question. And you cannot excuse your ignorance with such trite remarks, my learned friend.
Of course, sorry.
I found it, Mr. Naruhodo. Cast your mind back to the windows in Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab's room.
Alright, I'll try.
So the window opens in order to allow air to circulate inside the house. But as it's a top-hinged casement window, it swings open along the upper edge, you see?
I'm glad you've rectified your ignorance. Casement window's most prominent feature is its stay, a metal bar which prevents the window from being opened beyond a certain amount. It prevents it opening? This is all news to me.
Absolutely correct, sir. In other words, if a book or knife were to have been thrown through the open window, it would have clattered against the pane and fallen straight down the pavement below.
No. You see the problem then? Good. Your education in windows is complete. There was never any possibility of either the book or the knife traveling 15 yards over the road. That is, unless the window pane had been shattered, something we've discounted already. That can't be, no!
Did you see that, Raleigh? That young Japanese man just collapsed in agony.
Oh yes, my darling, I saw it. I saw he crumbled before me.
Oh, Raleigh, you're so strong.
I hate them. How is this happening? I haven't even started the cross-examination yet, and my argument's been destroyed.
Counsel, if you could drag yourself upright again, the court awaits your cross-examination.
My lord. No, good. Another desperate situation. Alright, you're good for your word, eh? How can you say that for certain?
Very good question, sir. And the answer is, it has the noble founding principles of the force written on it as a reminder to all us policemen of our sworn duty.
He showed us that before, didn't he?
Did he? Can't say I remember.
To patrol the streets of London town and uphold the peace of the common man. It's what the job's all about. And that is why I can stand here today beside my long-suffering wife and tell you a Bobby's good for his word. While rubbing my tired eyes admittedly, sir.
Oh, Raleigh, you're so manly.
Of course I am, my darling Patricia. I hope it.
Oh, Raleigh. Oh my god, I love you so much, Raleigh. You're so good at being tired. And passing out on the witness stand. And making fun of Japanese immigrants. You're so good at that.
None of this is what I meant. I meant, how can you say for certain that this case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab?
I see, sir. You should have said so earlier, sir.
Yes, well, so could you answer the question? That was a waste of time then.
Absolutely, sir. I will answer to the fullest of my abilities, sir. There's a surprising reason why Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab's domestic dispute can't be related to this case. But before I get into that, sir, just one thing. Can I take a quick nap? I very much like you and all your countrymen to understand the great British institution of Scotland Yard. So I hope you'll take back some of the tales of us London bobbies and how we uphold our guiding principles.
I wasn't planning on going back just yet, and I've only just arrived here.
So that ends, sir. I'd be happy to lend you my warrant card for your perusal. But I must warn you, you won't be able to get through it without shedding a few tears.
Thank you. I'll, put that in the court record. Yeah, let's look at that. Let's look at that.
You see, sir?
First off, I want to investigate. I'm not pressing any keys because I don't want to present on accident. I feel like that second part might be important.
Hold it!
Let's learn about the windows. By which you mean they don't open fully, is that correct?
Yes, sir. They're just there to allow a bit of air through the house, you see? So they are restricted as to how much they open.
And therefore, anything thrown out of the window from inside the room would simply strike the pane and fall to the street directly below it. For clarity, allow me to mark the map. Here is the location where objects would have fallen.
Yes. Directly opposite the scene of the crime on the other side of the rather wide road.
Would it have been so hard for somebody to mention this top-hinged casement thing before? No, we have to crush your spirit one by one, Reinosuke. Well, I have another question for you, Constable.
What would that be, sir?
How do you even know? Why would you have any idea what sort of windows Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab's house is furnished with?
Ah, well, sir, that's very simple. You see, I helped with the investigation yesterday.
No, you didn't. You got something to say, Patricia? Do you have something to add, Mrs. Beat?
Sorry.
You look, well, delighted. Is there some particular reason for that?
Oh, I was just remembering, that's all. We really were so lucky.
Lucky? What do you mean?
Well, of course I feel terrible for the poor woman who was attacked. Don't misunderstand me, please. But we were just so lucky it didn't happen on Raleigh's beat. It was so close, you know?
Oh, I hadn't realized.
Oh yes, that street, Briar Road, that's the boundary between Raleigh's beat and the next one.
I'm pretty sure we knew this.
Isn't that right, my love?
Constable Beat. He dead.
Oh, yes, that's right, sir. That's the reason I was helping out with the interviewing the occupants of the Gharadab household yesterday. Their house is on my beat, you see, sir.
That really was cutting it close then. I feel like they moved the scene of the crime. Did they? I feel like they moved the crime scene.
Constable, I wonder if you could clarify something. If the Gharadab household is on your beat, does that mean that the pavement next to it is as well?
Outside Mr. Gharadab's house, yes, ma'am. The pavement on that side of the road is part of my beat.
I see. I was unaware of that.
Just think, if the woman had been attacked just on the other side of Briar Road, we would never have been able to go for that meal to celebrate our wedding anniversary. But that's the life of a Bobby after all.
They literally moved the scene of the crime because they wanted to go on a date. I'm calling it now. 7:12 p.m. August 12th, 2021. These two disgustingly sweet couple. These disgustingly sweet, in love, puke-inducing, cringeworthy.
Oh my god, isn't that right, my love?
Move the scene of the crime so they could go on a date. Some of you may argue, but Allie, it's an important date. It's their wedding anniversary. You don't move a potentially dead woman to the other side of the street to be like, ha, wow, what a convenient thing that it's not on our side of the street. Then we wouldn't be able to go on a date. Wow, so convenient. I'm a boast about how convenient that was in court. We were so lucky that she nearly died on the other side of the street so we could go out for our wedding anniversary. Oh my god. Do you know what I think? I think it was the good Lord's way of rewarding my Raleigh for all of his hard work. Don't you think so, my darling? That's what she says. She says, my darling, not my sweetie.
That must be it, Pat, my love. That must be it. I didn't move the crime scene.
I think perhaps we should make sure we have that information officially on record.
Leave it to me, Mr. Naruhodo. I'll take care of it immediately. And now it's my turn, I think. Obviously, if anything had been thrown out of the window, we would have seen it.
Hold it!
But according to my notes here, the sun had gone down already and it was dark.
Oh, but Raleigh and I were strolling along, gazing at the night sky and looking for our lucky star.
Sorry?
The star that will guide us to eternal happiness.
Can't it guide you to the answer to the question?
If a flaming book had cut across the sky in front of us, it would have lit up like a shooting star.
And if I'd seen a shooting star, I would have made a wish upon it. Let Raleigh be an inspector, I would have said 3 times at least.
Of course. What with the smog and everything, we couldn't actually see any stars.
In short, are you trying to say that neither a book nor a knife crossed the sky before you?
Yes, sir, that is correct, sir. As sure as the night sky in London is starless, sir.
It certainly seems like they're telling the truth.
And then we saw the poor woman fall to the ground, so we ran straight over to help her. I did leave the scene to go and fetch help, but my trusty Raleigh was there to make sure nothing was disturbed.
Hold it!
Yes, you said that you went to a nearby police box to fetch another officer, is that right?
That's right, yes. If I had been on Raleigh's beat, I would have known exactly where I was going, of course.
Don't feel bad, my love. Can't be expected to know the location of every police box on every beat.
So Raleigh told me the way, only I sort of got a little lost on the way.
Patricia, my darling, that's why I love you. Your terrible sense of direction is bewitching to me. I love it how you're so useless without me. Makes it real easy to control you, even though you control me by choking me out with a scarf about 20 times a day. Oh, Pat.
Oh, Raleigh?
Oh, please.
I suppose I was gone for about 15 minutes. But like I said, my Raleigh was at the scene the whole time, making sure nothing was disturbed.
I was off duty at the time, of course, but true Bobby is never really off duty, sir. I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on that front, sir.
Hold it!
Nothing to report. Ryunosuke's getting boat flashbacks. Of that, the little book, the captain's log.
That's correct, sir. Had my eyes wide open the entire time, never looked away for a second, sir. No one else approached the scene and nothing was removed from it. I can swear to that on the odds honor, sir.
Well then, how did the book get there? Well, that seems a little strange.
Beg your pardon, sir. Strange, sir. Seems altogether regular to me.
This burnt copy of the Lion's Pride was originally in the Gharadab household. So the question remains, how did it find its way into the hand of the victim? Can you shed any light on that, seeing as you were at the scene of the crime the entire time?
Might have fell asleep, sir. Could be a different copy, sir. One that just happened to be burnt as well.
Even if that were possible, why would the victim have been gripping a book like that in her hand? So you can see from this photographic print, she had a bag over her shoulder.
Well,
Well, sir, that book was in the lady's hand from the moment we arrived at the scene. That's so. There's something about this statement that's not sitting right with me. The two mysteries of how that knife ended up in her back and how that book ended up in her hand. There must be some common thread between them. They were all on the other side of the street.
Can I ask you something, please, Mr. Lawyer, sir?
Oh, yes, of course. What is it?
You're doubting us, aren't you? I can tell.
What? I wasn't really. I mean, what's she doing?
Please, just because I'm a woman, it doesn't make my testimony any less valuable. You might just see me as the wife of a policeman, but I'm a woman of my word. I am. Even though I've literally made my identity of being the wife of a Bobby and making myself feel better than everybody else, because it's so hard being the wife of a Bobby. You know, because he gives his whole life to this country, and I give my life to him, so therefore I'm just as important. And my whole personality is talking about my husband's so cool because he's a police officer. And I like to choke him out with a scarf. I'm not evil, I promise.
I really don't remember ever suggesting that I doubted you.
No excuses, I don't want to hear it. My voice will be heard. My lord, will you let me speak, won't you?
Yes, Miss Beats, I will allow you to supplement your testimony if you so desire. Sometimes the path of least resistance is the sage one.
That was a very loud mutter.
I heard that. That Japanese man thinks a policeman's wife word counts for nothing, does he? Right? I don't care about him considering that all women's voices should be heard, but what about the word of a policeman's wife? See, I wanted to play the woman card, but then I defaulted back to I'm important because I'm a Bobby's wife. Like I said, that's my whole personality. Well, watch out, sir. I might let you get away with something like that, but my Raleigh won't, because he's so strong.
Duly noted, Mrs. B. Please, I humbly ask you to continue.
What could she possibly be about to say, I wonder?
I think she's gonna shoot herself in the foot, and I'm excited.
I know what I saw. My eyes never let me down. My sense of direction is a little off sometimes, though.
Hold it!
Mrs. B, nobody is questioning what you've told us. We are just asking questions.
I saw it. I did. That evening I saw it clearly. The little Eastern man with the whiskers and the funny curved back slinking away from the scene. And I know what I didn't see as well. I didn't see any flaming books or knives flying through the sky.
All very clear. You also mentioned something about having a poor sense of direction?
Oh, yes. Well, that's a little embarrassing, really. I'm always ending up at the wrong place when I've made arrangements to meet Raleigh. He gets ever so cross.
Excuse me,
you woke up from your nap to talk about how poor your wife's sense of direction is. Constable B, is there a problem? Yeah, no, sir. No problem, sir. Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind, perhaps? Oh, well, in a way, sir. Yes, sir. I was just remembering that the same thing happened that evening is all. You wanna say something? You mean Mrs. Beat lost her way on the night of the incident? Well, you see, I sent her off to find a police box and the next beat over for mine, sir. She was gone a fair bit longer than what I was expecting. Thought she'd be back inside 10 minutes, when my darling was gone a good 15.
Oh, Raleigh, you're such a tease. But the reason I was so long was because of the bouquet, silly.
The bouquet? Sorry, what bouquet are you talking about?
Oh, it was a present for our wedding anniversary. Raleigh's so romantic. He saved up for it with farthings and pennies he found in the gutter while doing his rounds.
Yes, how romantic.
I'd forgotten all about it until just now. Had you, my darling?
Oh yes. That was just between us. No talking about it to anyone else, darling. You have to promise.
Really? Oh.
What was that all about? Constable Beat looked very obviously troubled during that exchange.
I'm afraid I can't offer any useful insight, Mr. Naruhodo. But I'm quite sure of one thing. We have to ask Mrs. Beat about the bouquet.
Mrs. Beats, this bouquet you just mentioned. I'd like you to add details about it to your testimony, please.
Oh, really? Yes, I'd love to.
Yeah, I got a bouquet once of lilies. My mind was blown. I was like, oh, I've never gotten flowers before. Oh my god. They were so nice. The thing is, though, insert drink sip. The thing is about the bouquet, though, the lilies, is they, I want to say shed, because it wasn't the flowers. I mean, eventually the flower petals fell and I was sad, but the, pollen, horrendous. Horrendous. Pro tip, if you guys ever get lilies and you have them in your house, put something under it that you can just bleach, because it will try to go everywhere. I had them on the kitchen counter and like the counter got stained and there was like some stain on the floor. Eventually it came off, but it was a pain. Beautiful, but definitely have something, put it in an area, I guess, that's not under like a fan or an air vent so it doesn't go very far, and just put like a white cloth under it. Well, you have like a cloth playmat or cloth. What word am I looking for? I said playmat, but that's not what I was thinking. You know, like a dining mat. We have some of those in my house. The, table mat? I don't know what they're called. My brain only knows playmats anymore. I don't know. But put something under it that you can just bleach. Make, just because, or have like paper under it and you're gonna throw away. But it was hard. It was hard to clean. Hard to clean. Beautiful. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Everybody I showed it to was like, oh my gosh, that's so unique. Pro tip, pro tip. You're buying flowers, buy a nice little bouquet of lilies. Roses? Roses? Nah. Everybody gets roses. Except me, I've never gotten roses. Anyways. I recommend lilies.
What happened was I dropped my bouquet and ended up losing my way for a while.
Oh, wait. No. I meant to press, but I forgot. We gotta circle around.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Naruhodo. I have no right to speak out. I requested the cross-examination of Mrs. Gharadab without consulting you. Even if the judge did deny me.
Oh, I see. Well, I agree with you. We do need the testimony from Mrs. Gharadab if we're ever going to get to the truth of this matter.
Do you really think so?
Well, think about it. No matter how far it is across the road or how that window opens, Mrs. Gharadab's book found its way to the scene of the crime somehow, didn't it?
You're right.
And then there was Mrs. Gharadab's reaction to me showing her the knife. The woman's hiding something, I'm sure of it.
You're right again.
We need to use this cross-examination to uncover more clues. We'll get to the bottom of this one way or the other, I swear.
Yes.
Alright.
Hold it!
What does dropping a bouquet have to do with getting lost? You mean you dropped the bouquet at the scene of the crime?
Yes, that's right. I was so upset. When we ran over and saw it was a woman with a knife in her back, I was so shocked I dropped the bouquet Raleigh gave me. It was in a dark spot where the streetlights weren't casting any light, so I didn't notice it first.
I would like to look at the picture at the scene of the crime and see if there's anywhere possibly that it's dark. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that one. Then he went to the police box to report it to the policeman whose beat it was on?
Yes, and I came back to the scene together with the other constable, you see? That's when I spotted my bouquet again, but the funny thing was, when I went to pick it up, it was nowhere near the victim's body at all.
You got something to say about that, Mr. Raleigh? In case you need reminding, Mrs. Beats, the victim is not deceased.
I was all flustered for a moment before I heard a voice calling me from the other side of the road.
Your husband, presumably?
That's right! Silly me, I'd gone over to the wrong side of the street. Although I'm gonna blame the bouquet this time. I can't think how it got there. I really can't.
So the bouquet somehow moved from one side of Briar Road to the opposite. What if she's so directionally challenged that she doesn't actually realize that it was on his beat? He's like, Patricia, go find the constable. It's not on my beat. And then he moved the body to the other side of the road. And then the book, he put the book in her hand because he thought she was holding the book. Maybe they thought it was her, it was the book. It was her books. I don't know. I think I'm on to something. I called it at 7:12, right? Something like that? I don't know. 6:12? No. I haven't been recording that long. I'd predicted it. I predicted it.
Isn't it? But the worst of it is I forgot to pick up the bouquet again when we left the scene. That beautiful rose Raleigh bought me. With that change from the gutter he spent so long collecting.
Van Zeeks is like, this is disgusting. By bouquet, do you perhaps mean this sorry solitary rose?
Oh! Oh, yes, that's it. That's the bouquet Raleigh brought me for our anniversary with old bits of change he found in the gutter.
Maybe just call it a rose.
Tell us, Lord Van Zeeks, where did you come by the flower?
According to the report by the police officer in charge of the crime scene investigation, it was found on the edge of the pavement in front of the Gharadab household. In front of the Gharadab's house! Although it wasn't noticed until the morning as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. It was believed to be of no relevance to the case since it was found on the opposite side of the thoroughfare.
Oh, thank you, sir, thank you. Could I have it back now, please?
No, I think for good measure, this rose should be added to the court record as evidence.
Oh. But it's a symbol of our love. I want it back after the trial. Do you hear me? I want it back.
Good grief. Rest assured that I shall do my very best not to forget Mrs. B.
And take his eye off. Let's,
Hold it!
I think we pressed this one already. Thought she would have added testimony afterwards, but let's see. Yeah, because they talk about the book. Let's see what Susato has to say on our roundabout, because we got to go all the way around anyways.
Well, Mr. Naruhodo, what do you make of all this?
Yes. The whole idea of an invisible attacker has been troubling me all along, but I believe I'm starting to get a picture of what really happened here now. The fourth book that had no business being at the scene of the crime made me sure that Mrs. Gharadab was hiding something from us, but it's becoming increasingly clear that someone else has been hiding something from us as well. I think I may already be armed with everything I need to strike a decisive blow here. This time, it's going to expose the whole truth about this mysterious affair. Let's look at the court record. That's the thing, is like, why? He knows he had to help because it was on his beat, but it's not on my beat, sir. Question is, where do I? Huh. What do I present and where? I want to present the rose to show that you dropped it where you stood, then it's on the wrong side of the street. Let me present this. If we take a penalty, we take a penalty.
Objection!
We're taking a penalty. Okay.
I'm sorry, Counsel, but I failed to see the connection.
Oh.
And for heaven's sake, would you kindly desist from that wide-eyed, panic-stricken look you want to wear?
But it's the only panic-stricken look I know. Let me present the bouquet here.
Objection!
Close. I was close, but not quite. You claim, Constable Beats, that there is nothing to report in the 15 or so minutes you were guarding the scene. But that cannot be.
He's like, why would you say that to my Raleigh? What do you mean to say?
In your testimony just now, Mrs. Beat, you explained to the court that when you arrived back at the scene of the crime with the policeman assigned to that beat, the bouquet you had dropped at the victim's side was no longer anywhere nearby.
Objection!
Yes, on the opposite side of Briar Road to where the victim was attacked. But considering the size of that meager bouquet, if a single sorry bloom can be so described, no doubt it was blown in the wind across the street, back into the gutter where it belongs.
Meager!
Objection!
But if that were the case, why did Constable Beat not testify to the fact?
No one else approached the scene and nothing was removed from it. Constable Beat swore to that on Scotland Yard's honor. But the bouquet belonged to me. It has nothing to do with the case. That's why Raleigh didn't mention it, I'm sure.
No, because it's sadly not only your bouquet we're talking about here. More than just one thing in this case is mysteriously the wrong way around. What are you talking about? Think about it. Besides Mrs. Beat's bouquet, there's Mr. Gharadab's book. Mr. Gharadab's copy of The Lion's Pride, which was thrown out of the window by his wife, would have struck the pane of the casement window and landed here on the west side of the street. And yet, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road, in the victim's hand. Meanwhile, according to the testimony we've heard, Mrs. Beat's bouquet should have been dropped from here at the scene of the crime on the east side of the street. But in fact, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road, in front of Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab's house. There's no logical explanation for those things, unless somebody deliberately moved them.
What are you trying to say? The way you're talking, it sounds like you think my Raleigh's done something wrong. Don't you listen to a word that scrawny lawyer says? Wittering on about books and bouquets, why should we care? It's nitpicking, that's what it is.
No good. Mrs. Gharadab's come round. You might call it nitpicking, Mrs. Gharadab, but deliberately meddling with the scene of a crime is a criminal offense. It's called, tampering.
Tampering, Mr. Naruhodo.
But the person responsible for this tampering cannot admit to it, for a very subtle but compelling reason.
Objection!
Tampering? You barely heard the term before. Tell us, my learned friend. Who would possibly have had the cause to carry out such an elaborate deception? Yes, there is someone who tampered with the scene of the crime that evening. All the evidence and all the testimony points to that one particular person.
Counsel, I must demand that you substantiate this conjecture. Who are you saying is responsible for tampering with the scene of the crime?
Obviously, it's you! I'm sorry, this lady looks weird.
Raleigh Bates?
Take that!
Obviously, there's only one person it could have been. Constable Raleigh Beats, it was you!
What? A policeman? Member of the Scotland Yard?
What nonsense! Why would my Raleigh do something like that? There's no one straighter than my husband. Look, he's married to me. That proves he's straight. No, Bobby works more tirelessly for the people of London.
Mrs. Beats, You said in your testimony that your husband asked you to go to a nearby police box to fetch the officer on duty. The 15 minutes that you were absent from the scene is the only opportunity anyone had to tamper with it.
You're making it up. It's all nonsense. It's all lies. What about that Japanese man with the whiskers? I bet it was him. He did it.
Objection.
If that was true, Constable Beat would have seen him do it.
Oh. And forgive me for pointing it out, but when you dropped your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, it was after the defendant had fled the scene. Well.
Objection.
First you make accusations about the landlord and his wife, and now you incriminate a policeman as well. But your accusations lack one very important thing. You claim the crime scene was tampered with, but there is only one reason anyone would commit such a reckless crime: to hide something.
That's right. He's right. But my husband and I just happened to be there. That's all. So why would we have anything to hide? It doesn't make sense.
Did you guys want to go on your date? There is a motive. You guys didn't want to work. Y'all didn't want to do your job, so he's just like, yeah, my wife's stupid. She won't notice that it's the wrong side of the street. Let me just put it over there. So it's like, oh, it was on your side of the street. Wow, that was so convenient. You've offered no motive for this alleged tampering. And until you do, your accusations are nothing but empty threats. Oh, I got a motive. I got some motive. Constable Beat had a very good reason for wanting to tamper with the scene of the crime. That's the key to this entire affair.
Mr. Naruhodo, have you managed to solve this mystery?
Counsel, you have made a very serious accusation against a London police officer. If you are mistaken, I'm sure I need not point out that your reputation as a lawyer will be irrevocably damaged. With that stark warning in mind, you will now explain to the court the motive for this alleged tampering.
Yes, my lord. Let's present his book that says, if something happens on your beat, you gotta take care of it. Constable Beat's motive for tampering with the crime scene was to hide where the victim fell. Where the victim fell to the ground. This is what the Bobby had to cover up at all costs. What?
Where the victim fell? You mean where she was attacked? What are you talking about? We told you at the very start, didn't we? On the pavement of Briar Road, we saw it happen, remember? It was right here, as if anyone didn't already know.
That's certainly what everybody has been led to believe. But in fact, that isn't where the victim was stabbed at all.
What? What?
I'm beginning to wonder where this tumultuous trial will end, counsel.
If that's your assertion, then the court is dying to know, my Nipponese friend. Why? Why are you proposing that the crime actually took place that evening?
Take that!
But that's...
On the opposite side of the road.
I don't understand.
On the evening in question, Mr. Gharadab's book fell directly down from the open window above, and your bouquet, Miss Beat, never moved at all. What did move was the scene of the crime itself.
Good gracious!
Objection!
This is getting spicy. Perhaps you haven't been listening to the ample testimony the court has heard. But these witnesses both saw the moment the attack took place. Yeah, they did. They did. And then they moved it because the wife literally wouldn't notice.
That's why I love you so much, Patricia. You're stupid.
That's right. I saw it with my own eyes.
It was 5 o'clock in the evening and already dark. There was typical London fog on the ground when you saw the incident unfold and ran to the victim's aid. That was actually on the west side of Briar Road.
No, that's not true. It can't have been.
Constable Beat then arranged for you to be absent for a while by sending you for help. And during the 15 minutes you're away, he transplanted the scene of the crime. He moved all the things shown in this print. The victim herself, the 4 books. He moved everything, in fact, to the pavement on the east side of Briar Road.
Extraordinary.
But the constable overlooked one thing.
What? What did he overlook?
The bouquet, I presume. Exactly.
The prosecution told the court just a few minutes ago about the discovery of the rose bouquet. Lord Van Zeek said it wasn't noticed until the morning as it lay where the street lamps cast no light.
Yes, it couldn't be seen in the dark, obviously.
Which is why it was only the bouquet that was found in its original position on the pavement on the west side of Briar Road. And that is the defense's theory about what really happened that evening. How do you respond, Constable Raleigh Beat?
Well, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to nod off again, but I haven't slept properly in a month. Did I miss anything important?
Oh, Raleigh? It isn't true, is it? What the lawyer said is all lies, isn't it? I know it is because you're the most upstanding, righteous man that I know.
I had a dream. Terrible dream. All the things I did that night. Everything come out. Everything exposed.
Van Zeeks is like, are you effing kidding me right now? Are you actually that stupid to move the scene of the crime? Are you serious? I kind of feel bad for him. Like, he's just out here trying to be like, no, this is ridiculous. There's no way all these ridiculous things happen. Why is this little Japanese boy just showing up to ruin my parade here? Again, there's no way. There's no way he's intelligent enough to actually think this is real, right? And then he's like, are you serious? This actually happened? I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe it. This bro in front of me from this small island, my learned friend, actually picked up on something? Nah, dude. Nah.
Only it seems it wasn't a dream at all. Good golly! I just wanted to have a nice night with my wife. Order! What on earth is the meaning of all this?
Oh, Raleigh, why would you do something like this? Moving a corpse is a criminal offense, isn't it?
Wishing the victim dead should be one too.
Constable, explain yourself. Why would you do this? As a respected member of Scotland Yard, your duty is to protect the good people of London town. I can't say, sir. What? I really am ever so sorry about all this. For damaging the Yard's reputation. For everything.
I have a possible explanation for why, on that particular evening, Constable Beat felt compelled to move the scene of the crime. I can think of one reason. What? How could you possibly know? You, a foreigner, presuming to understand the mind of a Scotland Yard policeman?
And yet, Lord Van Zeeks, it is this foreigner who has uncovered the startling truth of this matter thus far. I believe it would be beneficial to the court to hear this extraordinary young lawyer's theory. Counsel for the defense, if you please.
Yes, my lord.
Now then, I think you had better show us some evidence.
At once, my lord. England, Japan, makes no difference where you come from. Human emotions are the same. And I think I have a fairly good idea of the feelings behind this man's actions.
What gives away the motive for Constable Beat's unthinkable actions?
I'm gonna present this.
Take that!
I realize that I'm a foreigner in this land, and I have only just arrived from Japan, which is why all this information about London's so-called bobbies is completely new to me. I've learnt that, though honorable, patrolling the beat is most demanding work in the world, for example.
Keeping the peace, looking after the citizens on his beat in all kinds of ways. There is no doubt that the young bobby is charged with a great deal to do each day, certainly.
But for Constable Beat, the day in question was special.
Special? How?
On account of this bouquet, my lord.
Oh, yes. It was our very first wedding anniversary.
Constable Beat had worked so hard to be able to afford this simple gift for his wife, and was so looking forward to taking her out for a celebratory meal, when he and Mrs. Beat stumbled upon a crime along Briar Road. when he saw that shadowy figure through the fog collapse on the pavement ahead of them. What must have gone through the man's mind?
But, sir, on just that one particular day I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. Mrs. Beat puts up with a lot being married to a bobby like me. I wanted to show my dear wife how much I care.
This is the warrant card that the Constable Beats offered to lend me earlier. Inside, among the rules for patrolling policemen, it says, when a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives.
Oh!
Constable Beats? Is that not the reason why you moved the whole scene of the crime that day?
Yes. Everything you said. It's all right, sir.
So that's it. It was all to do with the boundary of your beat.
Oh!
Exactly. To summarize, the incident actually occurred on Constable Beat's beat.
Good gracious! Constable, do you realize the gravity of what you have done? It was the first time since I became a copper that I'd ever cursed God. Stay close to me, Pat. That criminal could still be lurking somewhere. As we ran over to the scene, I had every intention of doing my duty as a police officer. We've got to report this to the station as quickly as possible. But then it dawned on me. I realized where we were, where the victim was lying, and what that meant for me. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Why here? Why did this have to happen here? And why tonight, of all nights? Why? It's a copper's job to guard the scene of the crime, so I told Pat she'd have to go to the nearest police box and fetch whoever was on duty there. It was then, when I opened my mouth to speak, it just came out. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of my own mouth. This is the next beat to mine, Pat. So you'll have to go to the police box that covers it. Turn right along Meerschaum Street and then... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Constable.
I just wanted, just that one night, to take my Patricia out for dinner.
Oh, Raleigh.
Just that one night.
You knew that if the incident was on your beat, your evening of celebration would be ruined. And so you decided to move the entire crime scene outside your jurisdiction, just across the street, to the east pavement of Briar Road, which falls under the neighboring beat's care.
You see, I thought, well, I was sure the victim was dead, you see.
I beg your pardon.
I beg your pardon.
Oh, of course he did. Otherwise, my Raleigh would never have left the poor woman on the freezing cold pavement.
Oh, I see your meaning now. But God got me back for my sins, didn't he? That's why I missed the rose I bought for Pat.
Oh no, Raleigh, that was all my fault. I should never have dropped it in such a dark place. I'm so sorry, Raleigh.
And can you tell us, Constable, how many books did you move from one side of the road to the other in total?
4 it was, yes, sir. Definitely 4.
3 of them dropped by Mr. Natsume, and the 4th being the one that fell from the window upstairs in the Gharadab household, of course.
But what made you place that book in the victim's hand? When all the others were scattered haphazardly around, I mean.
Oh, well, sir. That's because that's how I found it.
How you found it? What do you mean?
when we first ran over to the scene. The victim was already holding the book. So, when I moved everything, made sure it was still in her hand.
You're sure it was this book, The Lion's Pride, that the victim was holding?
Oh yes, sir. No doubt about it, sir.
Interesting.
I thought it was an open and shut case at the time, you see. There were only 2 people at the scene, and Pat and me both saw it happen. However, which way you look at it, had to be the fellow who ran off who done it. I thought... I couldn't see the harm, really. I didn't think moving it all over the road would make a jot of difference. I suppose this is it for me now. I've had it.
My lord?
Yes, Lord Van Zeeks.
I believe that concludes the cross-examination of the witnesses. Constable, you may withdraw.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Prosecutor, sir? What will become of my Raleigh? What will happen to him?
For now, you are free to go home. The police will contact you in due course.
Please, don't punish my husband. This is all my fault. It's because I'm always moaning at him for coming home late.
Leave it now, Pat. Let's go home. I'm tired.
All right then, my love.
One last thing, Constable.
Sir?
Let this be a lesson to you. In a criminal investigation, every detail matters, however insignificant it may seem to you.
Yes, sir.
Carve that lesson into your mind. And never again make the mistake of tampering with the scene of a crime.
Huh? Never again, sir? You mean that say?
Leave, now. This trial is not yet over. Aw, he has a heart. Van Zeek's over there on the prosecutor's side being like, oh, that's so sweet. That's so sweet. Look how in love they are. That's so cute. Oh my goodness, he did that for their anniversary. That's so sweet. And he's like, leave. Ultimate tsundere here. I mean, that would be a plot twist. That would be a twist I'd be down for. Inside his brain, Van Zeeks is actually soft uwu boy. Soft uwu boy confirmed.
Well, quite a startling revelation, I must say. Who'd have thought of a third party transplanting the entire scene of a crime like that?
Indeed, my lord. Nevertheless, there are some immutable facts here. Principally, that the accused, Mr. Soseki Natsume, is the only person who could possibly have committed this crime.
Objection!
No, I disagree. Now that we know the true scene of the incident, there is someone else. Another person who could be responsible for the knife in the victim's back.
Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I believe the prosecution is probably well aware of this possibility already.
Lord Van Zeeks, is this true?
Very well. Name the person if you will, and if further investigation is warranted, the prosecution has no objections to the trial continuing. He seeks the truth. Soft uwu boy confirmed.
You will name this other person who could have perpetrated the crime?
Take that!
Soul Rock! The defense would once again like to request the cross-examination of a new witness, my lord.
Once again?
My assistant made the same request earlier. In order to finally reveal the truth about this case, it is imperative that we cross-examine juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Gharadab.
Me? Me? Oh, dearie me!
Objection!
That request has already been denied.
Objection!
But the situation is very different now. Mrs. Gharadab, answer me this.
What do you want now, you little toad?
At the time of the incident, you were engaged in a violent argument with your husband, Mr. John Gharadab. In the course of the argument, minor house fire was ignited, and to clear the smoke from the room, your husband opened a window that looks out over Briar Road.
Well, what of it?
You threw this book at your husband when he was cornered with his back against the window. Upon striking the pane of the open-top, hinged casement window, the book plummeted directly down. Finding its way to what we now know be the true scene of the incident.
Yes, and as I said, what of it?
During the arguments, you were beside yourself with rage. As such, you threw not just books, but anything you could lay your hands on. So, let me ask you one more time, Miss Gharadab. This knife, the one removed from the victim's back, have you really never laid eyes on it before?
I don't recall it.
Seriously?
Am I supposed to remember everything I picked up and threw at my husband? And anyway, the man over there in all that regalia said members of the jury needn't testify, didn't he?
Conveniently, yes.
Objection!
No, I have no recollection of saying that at all. Juror number 4. Softy woo boy confirmed. He just wants justice. This guy, he's a little rude. He's a little racist. But he's opening his mind a little bit, down to try new things, down to pursue justice. I'm loving it. Hit him with the reverse Uno card. I don't recall saying that. I don't know.
Oh!
Make no mistake, your jurors are not special in any way. You are not immune to the judicial process. If you know something about this knife, madam, let the truth come out.
But that's just a commoner garden knife. It could have come from anywhere. We have several like that at home. If one went missing, how would you expect me to know? What's that?
Are you joking?
What are you saying, please, Mrs. Gharadab?
We have those all over the house, man. Now you listen to me. I refuse to believe all this nonsense. I couldn't bear the thought that I'd injured someone. Do you hear? I couldn't bear it. Oh, the poor woman. So yes, I want evidence. I want to see hard evidence if you're going to insist on this being my fault. You're going to have to prove to me that I threw that knife if that's what you think. Come along now. Chop chop. Do your worst.
Well,
Mr. Naruhodo?
if I had evidence like that, believe me, I would have thrown it at her already. Then take the stand, juror.
Oh!
The prosecution does not object to the defense's request to cross-examine this woman. Thank you, Lord Van Zeeks.
I'm going to have to testify?
Juror number 4, as I'm sure you will appreciate having observed it with your own eyes today, witness testimony can lead to the most extraordinary truths being unearthed, truths of which the witnesses themselves may not even have been aware.
Oh, dearie me.
So I demand your full and unadulterated testimony, Mrs. Gharadab. Mark my words, in this court of law today, we shall extract the truth. Do you concur, counsels?
Certainly, my lord. Oh, that's what I'm hoping for, my lord. Alright, now the question is, are we going to see a save here to go to trial part 3? Or will we just do it right here? This is such a strange feeling. For the first time since arriving in this country, it actually feels real. I'm here, in the Old Bailey, and I'm a lawyer. Alright, so we're jumping on into it. Witness, state your name and occupation.
Oh, yes, my name is Joan Gharadab. And I'm a juror and such like.
Sounds like even she doesn't know if she's a housewife or a maid, or what anymore.
The court has decided your testimony is required in order to clarify matters in this case. Do you understand, madam?
Yes, my lord.
You will tell the court everything that took place in your household on the evening in question. And I warn you, do not attempt to hide the truth.
Oh, dearie me.
Chin up, Joni. Nothing to worry about now.
Oh, I didn't know you were here, John.
It wasn't only you in the room that day, old thing, was it? Rather think I ought to testify as well, don't you? Look at this soul rock and lunatone romance.
But what about your knee, dear?
Don't you worry about that. Hardly notice it. Not the sort of chap to leave a comrade to face disciplinary action alone.
Oh, John.
I presume you are Mr. John Gharadab? Yes, sir. Former second lieutenant of the 3rd Regiment of the 4th Northumberland Fusiliers, sir. Seen my fair share of action and now living the quiet life, as it were.
The quiet life, where you're not engaged in an incendiary battle with your spouse on the day in question.
Well, yes, quite.
You know, these things just happen.
I believe this may represent a first in the proud history of the British court. Calling a juror to the witness stand is unprecedented. However, the court will hear your testimony now, juror number 4, and that of your husband. You will recount clearly and concisely the events in your home at the time of the incident in question. Sir, at once.
The Battle of Gharadab.
Yes, on the day you're referring to, the wife and I did have a bit of a skirmish. Can't recall the reason now.
Knocked the candlestick over and set fire to the carpet. Soon had it out though and got the window open.
Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him.
Plenty of knives around our place. Can't say I'd noticed if 1 or 2 went missing, I'm afraid. That belly thing in the victim's back really was one of ours. You'll have a job proving it, I think.
Sounds as though it was quite the battlefield in your household that evening.
Although an entirely one-sided assault, it seems.
The enemy caught us on the hop, sir. Had no choice but to dig in and take defensive measures.
To be honest, if the enemy had kept shelling us for another minute, we'd have been toast. Of course, a veteran such as myself is only too aware that on every battlefield, you're just a gnat's whisker from death at any moment. Are we still talking about a marital quarrel here?
Well, I must say I'm dubious that this testimony will shed any light on the origins of this jackknife.
In combat, one's focus narrows such that surroundings are barely noticed. These witnesses may not be able to offer anything more than they have testified already. This may be a dead end. Van Zieks may well be right.
Well, whatever the chances, we only have this last cross-examination to uncover the truth, Mr. Naruhodo.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Very well, counsel. Begin your cross-examination.
Look at the court record. Alright, this is just a regular knife. I was hoping there'd be like, it was maybe like a gift, an army gift or something, and it had like a little army insignia or something, but no, nothing going on. Hoping for the easy way out. Easy. Be like, bruh, it's got your troop insignia on it. Got him, but no. Alright, let's press. Press it all and see where it all goes.
Hold it!
The reason is what you told us yesterday, I believe.
Yes, that's right. If I remember correctly, it all started because of a note that was tucked into the pages of a book belonging to Mr. Gharadab.
A rather passionate note, in fact.
But Mrs.
Gharadab found the note, discovering her husband's little secret.
And she gave him a mighty number of slaps across the face for it, too.
What sordid state of affairs?
Hell on earth. I say, when a chap says he can't recall such things, it's common decency not to drag it all up. And besides, half of it was wide of the mark anyways.
A likely story.
These waters run very deep.
What transpired next after these multiple blows to the face?
Hold it!
And the fire also spread to some items of furniture, didn't it? The bookcase, my armchair, anything of mine, really. Just so happens there was some bathwater around that evening, so I sloshed that about to put it out.
Most precarious situation you put yourself in.
Ours is a 3-story townhouse on the west side of the street, where the water main isn't connected yet. Have to draw water from a public water pump during the day if you need any, you see?
The lodgers are always moaning that they can't get any water at night. Although, that little mustached Japanese man buys water in bottles, I believe.
The defendant, Mr. Natsume, you mean?
Yes, he receives a stipend for his studies, you know, from his home country. Can you imagine being able to brew a pot of tea at all hours? He's obviously very well off.
Have you actually seen the state of the man?
I believe he uses all of his income to buy books.
Well, anyway, the point is, I was able to douse the fire with water, fortunately enough.
Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him.
Hold it!
Even though the room was on fire?
As far as I was concerned at the time, it was more important to extinguish my anger than the flames. When a woman wants to throw, she must throw. That is most certainly not true of a Susanto takedown, Mr. Naruhodo.
How did she know I was thinking that? So, please cast your mind back and try to remember. Was a knife among the items that you threw at your husband that day?
In all honesty, I don't recall. But I feel I must point out that I'm no monster. Let me see. Some bread, a cabbage, garlic, a towel, and a sponge, a napkin.
Excuse me.
Do you have something to add, sir? Mr. Gharadab. Hey, don't shoot. Ah, sorry, I beg your pardon. Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind? Nothing of any significance, nope. Just that barrage of projectiles the old thing launched in my direction was somewhat more solid than she implies. Books, bricks, and the fire poker, I seem to recall. Ouch. And the woman's aim is uncanny. She landed a direct hit with every bally... Ah! Good grief, woman, we're not at home now. This is a court of law.
Oh, dearie me. Ever so sorry, dear.
What's she even doing with a teapot in here?
Honestly, John, I would never have thrown such things at you, obviously.
Well, take a look at this then. How do you suppose that happened,
Your pipe, sir.
Had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out with one of her soft projectiles, she did, yes. And when I went to pick the thing up, it was broken in two. I'd like to see a sponge do that sort of damage. I see, your pipe was broken. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Anyway, managed to bandage the thing up for now.
You're one to exaggerate, aren't you, dear?
I wonder what we should make of this account. Could be important. The defense believes Mr. Gharadab's remarks just now to be of great significance.
Objection!
This war veteran's words only tell us one thing. Betray a fiery wife, and pipes as well as hearts may be broken. Sentimental wisdom, perhaps, but hardly worthy of adding to the formal testimony.
Indeed, common sense, one might say.
Might one?
In that case, would you at least permit us to examine the pipe, sir?
Well, I don't see why not.
Oh, dearie me. There you go again, trying to ingratiate yourself with a young lady.
Very well, the court will accept the gentleman's pipe as evidence.
Alright, let's see the knife scratch in the pipe.
I hope I didn't speak out of turn, Mr. Naruhodo. I was just feeling rather disappointed for you that your request was turned down.
Oh no, it's fine. Thanks to Susanto-san, we have some new evidence to work with. We should examine it carefully. Let's do that. Oh, wait, over there. Over here. Looks to be in a sorry state with that bandage around it, doesn't it? But for some reason, it feels slightly ominous to me, like it's trying to shout out a warning. Probably because it's the same blue as Mr. Gharadab's dressing gown.
I suppose it must have considerable sentimental value to Mr. Gharadab, given that he's gone to the trouble of repairing it like this.
Either that, or he can't afford to replace it. This looks like he got stabbed. Stabberoonied. There's a small nick out of the bowl here. Look, appears to have been made relatively recently.
And see how there are little scrapes and dents all over it? It's clearly a well-loved pipe.
Yes, you're right. Seems to me recently that being well-loved goes hand in hand with getting some battle scars. This particular nick is catching my eyes, though, because it's clearly new.
Well, thank you for that rebuttal, Mr. Gharadab. Now if we could return to the crux of the matter. What can you tell the court about the knife used to attack the victim?
Hold it!
Sorry, would you care to elaborate? Nothing to say, really. Rather partial to a spot of carving, you see? Pipes and whatnot, fishing tackle, you know, the sort of thing.
It's a passion we both share. Like to carve little wooden trinkets, too. Then there's my leather work.
Sorry to say, we're always losing knives about the place. We have dozens of the things.
They sell them at the market sometimes, 20 for the price of 19. Needless to say, I snapped them up. John prefers to use 2 knives at meal times, too, instead of a knife and fork.
Now, Joan, we don't want people thinking I'm some sort of savage. Ah! Here we go again with the scaldings. Why are they being so evasive?
I imagine it's because they don't want to believe it. They can't bear the thought that it might have been one of their knives that injured the victim.
Which is entirely understandable, of course, but still. Go on with your testimony, witnesses. Sir! That bally thing in the victim's back really was one of yours, so you'll have a job proving it, I think. I'm a press, and then we might swing around and present the pipe there. So you have no intention of admitting it was your knife, unless we can produce proof? Even though there's no other credible possibility if Mr. Natsume is innocent?
Objection!
You forget, my Nipponese friend, that it has yet to be established that the accused is not responsible for the attack. As if I could forget. If only there was some way to know who had handled the knife. But I suppose wizardry like that is just a dream.
Perhaps you're thinking of fingerprinting, Mr. Naruhodo.
What? You mean it's not a dream? That sort of wizardry really exists?
Whenever people touch anything, they leave behind a unique pattern from their skin, or so they say.
But I can't see anything. There are already countries in the world where these so-called fingerprints can be used as evidence. Lord Strongheart is currently discussing the matter at the Ministry of Justice.
Yes, I believe we are rapidly approaching an era of scientific methods of investigation.
But for now, we shall have to find an alternative method of proving our assertion that this knife found in the victim's back was originally in Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab's house.
If only I could transplant this whole incident to several years in the future. That's the extent of their testimony, is it?
What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo?
Well, I think we've heard all this before, to be honest. And I can't say I'm particularly confident I will be able to prove anything new from this testimony.
But in this cross-examination, it's absolutely essential. Now we establish how this knife came to be at the scene of the incident.
Yes, I know.
I'm sure both of them must be feeling very worried. Worried that it was in fact a knife belonging to one of them that caused the victim's injury.
If we could find even a tiny shred of evidence to support that theory, it would clinch this trial for us. It would explain everything.
Yes, it would.
So for Soseki-san's sake, we must find that last crucial piece of evidence. Let's see how this works out. It didn't work out. Alright, cool. Maybe we should look at it again. I want to look at it again. Investigate. Oh, something just twinkled inside the chamber of the pipe there.
Yes, I saw it. Something stuck in there, I think.
Let's turn it over and give it a shake. What's this?
It's a tiny fragment of metal. It looks like the tip of a blade or something.
The tip of a blade? Surely it couldn't be. Let's see if the knife is broken. That's what we needed.
Objection! Take that!
Uh-oh, how long has that been going on? If you look closely, you will see that there is a small piece at the tip of the blade that is missing. A common issue with the inferior blades sold at the unsavory street markets. Criminals who use them regularly leave tips lodged in their victims' bones.
And what of this particular knife?
No doubt its tip has suffered a similar fate, now languishing somewhere near the spine of the victim.
Objection!
Yeah, but we found it in the pipe. Got him. No, that's not the case. The tip of this particular knife's blade is the very fragment of metal we discovered in the chamber of Mr. Gharadab's pipe.
Ah! Good grief, Lord Van Zeeks!
I don't believe it. The knife from the crime scene and this fragment of metal are a perfect match.
Good golly gosh! Order! Is this some sort of Eastern sorcery?
This is no magic, my lord. This is a miracle.
A miracle?
So Van Zeeks has figured it out, has he?
Counsel, explain this extraordinary coincidence at once.
Yes, my lord. The crucial point we have to ask ourselves here is when did the fragment of metal find its way inside Mr. Gharadab's pipe?
Something that was clarified for us in the most recent witness testimony.
Had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out with one of her soft projectiles, she did. Yes. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Oh, dearie me. During the argument between these two that occurred just as the victim was on the pavement below, Mrs. Gharadab flung this knife at her husband. However, the knife missed Mr. Gharadab, instead striking the pipe in his hand at the time, which caused the tip to break off, of course.
Good lord.
Yes, and that is when the tiny tip of the blade found its way inside Mr. Gharadab's pipe. The chances of that are 1,000,000 to 1. And yet, there's no other credible explanation for how the tip of the blade ended up in your pipe. Then, after losing its tip, the knife ricocheted off the pipe and flew out of the open window. In short, this knife, which fell from the window of the Gharadab's house, is the very same knife that struck the victim in the middle of the back in the street below.
Oh gosh, oh dear. Oh, no!
Objection!
A full-bodied theory, I'll give you that. A complex bouquet of seemingly trivial points plausibly arranged to create an almost passable vintage. Allow me to toast my learned friend's characteristically Nipponese approach to bottling his arguments. Sorry? But after all, it is just a theory. The bottle, I fear, is corked. Because you see, it's spoilt by an insurmountable inconsistency. An insurmountable... what?
Lord Van Zeeks, explain yourself. What is this inconsistency you claim to have identified?
An inconsistency of the simplest nature, my lord. The victim was found with the knife planted in the middle of her back. She bent over to pick up the book. She was like, bruh, this book's on fire, just fell from the sky. Yes, and her...
That's right, you silly little man!
Now, Joan, old thing, what are you getting so excited about? Let us consider the basic facts of this case once more. The victim was walking along the pavement before being stabbed in the back and falling to the ground. If the knife that struck her had fallen from above, there's no possible way it could have planted itself in the victim's back. Yeah!
Easy, easy.
We have an easy solution here.
Order, order!
Quite right, you see? That's exactly right. If the knife had fallen on her from above, it would have struck her on the top of her head.
Well,
It would appear that the defense has made a rather spectacular blunder.
if a theory has even one inconsistency, it cannot stand. Your theory, my learned friend, is history. We were so close, I could see the truth. I was so sure we were on the right track. But now, the way has been blocked completely, by just one simple inconsistency.
Mr. Naruhodo, you just gotta explain it away.
Or in other words,
We simply need to eliminate that one inconsistency and the theory will still stand.
Miss Susato,
You mustn't worry, Mr. Naruhodo. You were just caught off guard, that's all. And your mind went blank. But if the path you are on is indeed correct, then a way will present itself. The key to this is in the court record, I'm sure. All the information you need is there.
the book. Seems you have nothing to say, my Nipponese friend. Well, your silence speaks volumes. A tacit acceptance that your theory is fatally flawed.
Objection!
This inconsistency doesn't mean I was on the wrong side of things. It means that I need to sharpen my mind and dig deeper for the truth. It's a test. Yes. If the knife fell on the victim from above, there's no way that it could have hit her in the middle of her back. Under normal circumstances, that is. What are you implying?
Counsel?
There is a piece of evidence in the court record that can explain this inconsistency. That can explain how the knife fell from above could have pierced the victim's back. We've already have the answer. Goodness! Utter madness.
Surely this must be the last time. Counsel, present the evidence of which you speak.
This is the last inconsistency, the final piece in the puzzle. If I can successfully make sense of this, the truth will be laid bare at last. The evidence that explains how the falling knife became lodged in the victim's back is...
Take that!
this, the fourth book found at the scene. This is the final piece of evidence that the defense will present. The burnt book. Oh, we got the music going.
Is that not Mr. Gharadab's book?
Yes, and to understand its significance, we have to consider how it came to be at the scene in the first place. This photographic print clearly shows the book in question, and the victim holding it in her hand. But as we all now know, it was the police constable that put the book between her fingers like that.
Quite so, as part of his wholesale transplanting of the crime scene to the opposite side of the road.
That's true. However, as part of his testimony, Constable Beats made an extremely enlightening statement on that point. But what made you place that book in the victim's hand? Oh, well, sir, that's because that's how I found it, sir. When we first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So, when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand. In other words, the victim had already picked the book up of her own volition. And clearly, that must have been before she suffered the knife wound.
Well, I should say so. After being attacked with a knife, I don't imagine she'd been doing much of anything.
So the question becomes, why did the victim have that book in her hand?
By Jingo.
I think I'm beginning to see what may have happened now.
Oh, dearie me.
We know that the book fell from the top floor of the Gharadab household onto the pavement below, at precisely the moment that the victim was walking past. Yes, exactly that moment. The young woman was walking alongside the street in the light fog, when all of a sudden, a book fell right in front of her. The book got through? Yes, Mrs. Gharadab. And what do you think the woman did? What would you do if you're walking along and suddenly a book landed in front of you on the pavement? Well, I really can't imagine it. But I suppose she might have reached down and picked up the book. Yes, that is exactly what the woman in fact did. She picked up the book.
Oh heavens.
And when the woman reached down to pick the fallen book up, what position would her back have been in? That's right, facing the sky, completely and utterly defenseless. Then, in the very next moments, while the woman was still bent over picking up the book, the next object fell from the room above, the jackknife, straight into the middle of her back. And at that same time, walking by chance directly behind Miss Green, was the defendant, Mr. Soseki Natsume.
Well, I never.
It appeared to Mr. Natsume that the woman simply collapsed on the floor, in the dark and the fog. He didn't see the knife falling on her from above. And from the other direction, the constable and his wife saw no one but the victim and her apparent attacker.
So there never was a real culprit to run from the scene in the first place?
No, this was nothing more than a series of unlikely events that culminated in an unfortunate accident. And that is the real truth behind this case. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Gharadab,
Very first time you showed me that knife, I had my suspicions. I wondered if perhaps it might have been something like that.
there, old bean.
Poor Mrs. Gharadab.
Of course, I never meant for anything of that sort to happen, but
It was all my fault, wasn't it?
take full responsibility. I let my anger get the better of me. I threw that book, and I threw the knife as well. John, dear, it's all right. I know. I'm ever so sorry. Truly. I'm sorry! Aww. He's trying his best. Aww.
Lord Van Zeeks, what news of Mrs. Gharadab?
She's been taken to the infirmary. It would appear that today's events had left her in an especially flustered state. However, I believe she will recover in due course. There is no cause for concern.
Yes, unbeknownst to themselves, they caused what could have easily been a terrible tragedy. They shall have to prepare themselves for the consequences of their actions.
There is some good news, however, my lord. I have just had word from the hospital where the victim is being treated. Her condition is improving steadily, and the doctor believes she will regain consciousness soon. It's strange. We've been talking about the victim all this time, but we've never once met her.
How wonderful! The woman is out of danger, it seems.
Yes, that is good news.
So, Mr. Soseki Natsume... yes! On behalf of my fellow countrymen, I would like to take this opportunity to beg your pardon, sir. You came from your distant eastern homeland to study our great British culture and have been repaid with immeasurable unkindness. Please accept our heartfelt apologies. No, it is me who should be begging your pardon.
Oh no, Mr. Natsume.
That evening, when the young woman just collapsed on the pavement before my eyes, I jumped to the wrong conclusion again in my confusion. What conclusion, sir? I was sure that the woman was dead.
Yes, Constable Beats said the same thing, didn't he? He thought she'd been killed too.
I suppose she must have looked completely lifeless.
It's been about a year since I arrived in Great Britain now, but still can't get used to life here. I can't relax. I'm sure there are evil spirits lurking in the fog, like they are haunting me.
Poor Soseki-san. His imagination really has got the better of him.
Yes, poor man.
So when it happened, I thought the young woman had been taken by the fog spirits. I should never have dropped my books like that and run away. I should have called for help, for a doctor, for the police. Instead, I've managed to create a rift in relationship of trust between our two empires, and for that, I am truly sorry. One could indeed say that some sort of mischievous spirit has been at work here, I think. One that created a chain of unfortunate mishaps. We were befooled by the spirits, led to false conclusions. But thanks to Lord Van Zeeks and our young lawyer here from the east, that chain has now been broken and the spirits exorcised. I heartily commend you both.
Oh!
Now then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes, my lord.
In concluding this trial, I must ask one last time for your decisions regarding the defendant's culpability. Are you ready to present your findings to the court?
As the foreman of this jury, I can assure you we've reached a fair and just conclusion.
I do declare the truth can be extremely cruel at times.
Well, I didn't suspect the woman next to me, that's for sure. Sitting in for the old bean whilst she's out of action, you know, but I know what her decision would be. Does this mean I'll finally be able to get out of here and start work? Well, it's about time. I say, I'll have a corker of a story to tell the grandchildren when I get home, won't I?
Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I hereby demand your final decisions. Mr. Foreman.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Very well. Mr. Soseki Natsume, I hereby pronounce you...
Not guilty. Whoop whoop.
And finally, Mr. Natsume. Oh, yes, Lord Sir. You are now a free man once more. It is my hope that you will continue to further your education in British culture. And may you never again be brought before me. Oh, yes, sir. Of course. On my life, I swear I'll never set foot in a courtroom again. I'm transported 2 tiers. Thank you, counsels. Court is adjourned.
All right, 3:17 p.m. in the defendant's antechamber.
Oh, locum.
Wait, you mean me?
Of course. There's another locum here.
Is there even one?
Compared to the original locum student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, your name has become rather short, hasn't it?
What's wrong with using my actual name?
Oh, at last!
Oh, at last, I'm free. I'm free. Joyful, joyous, jubilant, jubilation. Jetty, hearty, happiness, hurrah!
Oh, I am pleased. Mr. Natsume is delighted.
Would it be so hard just to say that then?
Locum, you did it. You saved me from the brink.
Well, what happened to the poor woman was in no way your fault, after all. I'm just glad everyone can see that now.
No, not that. Lovely, loyal locum lawyer.
Yes?
I mean, as I said before, I have just never got used to a life here in Great Britain. Every time I look over my shoulder, I see foreigners. I see towering brick buildings. And from high up windows, I see them looking down on me laughing. Look at that little hunchback.
Oh dear, I'm sure it's all in your head, Mr. Natsume.
But today, you, locum lawyer, gave my gloom the boot. You stood firm behind that baronial bench before those babbling British. You battled to the bitter end, laying bare the baffling truth. And when I beheld the blinding fireworks among the beams of the Bailey's roof, I bellowed, "Behold the best barrister ever born!"
Well, that's very flattering, and we're very pleased for you.
This has given me a wonderful anecdote to recount to my old friends back in Japan.
An anecdote? That's what's become of all my hard work.
Ah, there you are, my dear fellows. I apologize for keeping you waiting. I rose late this morning.
Ah, Mr. Sholmes, what a pleasure to see you.
I am here not a moment too soon. A disaster has been averted, I'm glad to say.
Oh,
The trial shall begin presently, Mr. Naruhodo, and I wish you the very best of luck.
It's just finished.
What? No! And my haste was in vain. Ah!
It's you! Airlock Sholmes!
Oh, have we met, sir?
this is Mr. Natsume, the man you had arrested, Mr. Sholmes.
Ah, I see. I failed to recognize you at first. Our previous encounters have taken place in the gloom, either of your bleak lodgings or that prison cell. I simply couldn't place that curious face in the light.
Charming.
This is all your fault, Airlock Sholmes. You're the reason I had to go through this terrible ordeal. I'm going to give you a piece of my mind.
My apologies, sir, but I assure you, I have placed you now. You're the fellow who abandoned that poor young lady and ran off, are you not? Had she been taken to a hospital more urgently? I feel perhaps she would have regained consciousness by now.
Oh.
But it was unavoidable, I'm sure. We are but human after all. Anyone would have been shaken by such an experience.
I do feel very badly about how I behaved.
Well, never mind. Now then, what was it you wanted to say to me, sir?
Nothing.
Priceless! Oh, I am so sorry, really, but... that was quite priceless.
Poor Soseki-san.
Still, on the bright side, you've had an extremely entertaining experience without paying a penny. And it would seem you were not even found guilty.
But there is no bright side.
Whatever do you mean, Mr. Natsume?
Even after this, I'm still cursed by the spirits and now by the Reaper.
Nah, Lord Van Zeeks.
I haven't forgotten, you know, what facing that man at court means. Even if you're found not guilty, you're still doomed.
It will all be alright, Mr. Natsume.
Huh?
If the Reaper appears trying to make trouble, I will protect you. Hiya! With a perfectly executed Susanto takedown.
Much as I like being turned on my head, a bit of warning might be nice next time, Miss Susato. Yeah, I want to see Susato and Van Zeek throw hands. So, Mr. Natsume, what do you intend to do now? You mentioned something about recounting your experiences to your friends back in Japan?
Yes, I intend to return to my homeland soon.
Oh!
It has already been a year since I arrived here in Great Britain. I've visited universities, libraries, bookshops. I've been honored with the tutelage of professors. I've learned so much about the wealth of literature here and the city it has shaped. And I've come to realize that it is my calling to sail home and tell my fellow countrymen about it.
That's very touching, Mr. Natsume.
Or, in perhaps less veiled terms, you wish to withdraw halfway around the world to escape the terror of the Reaper's curse?
That's not it at all! The more I learn of literature, the more this strange feeling claws in my insides. I feel compelled to return to my roots and attempt to pen a work of my own.
Oh, I see. A work of literature by Soseki-san. Could be an interesting read.
And what about Miss Susato and yourself, Mr. Naruhodo?
Sorry, what about us?
Will you return to Japan alongside your mustache compatriot?
Why would we?
A week has not yet passed since we arrived in London. And only now does it feel as though we've finally found our feet.
And you are accommodated in a hotel at present, are you not?
That's right, but we need to find lodgings before it bankrupts us.
I've calculated we can only afford another 10 nights before our entire budget is exhausted.
Well then, you could take my lodgings.
Oh, the windowless room.
But what it lacks in windows, it more than makes up for with the floor, the ceiling, and walls.
Great.
And of course, I'd be happy to leave behind the accursed evil spirit.
Oh my, an evil spirit!
Oh yes, it tries to suffocate you while you sleep. It's an infallible wake-up call.
The cat. Well, we'll think about it, if that's alright.
Perhaps I can offer a more welcome alternative. Would you consider taking lodgings with me?
Really? I've always dreamed about sleeping next to the great Herlock Sholmes. Really, I'd love to.
Yeah, I could split rent 4 ways with 2 Japanese foreign exchange students, a 10-year-old and myself.
Oh.
Well, a vacancy has conveniently presented itself. No, it is up in the attic, I might add.
Are you sure it isn't just a storage loft?
I spoke with the landlady this very morning on the matter of price, and Iris is cleaning the room as we speak. You must come at once. I presume you have no luggage to speak of.
Oh, this is simply wonderful. What an honor to be invited to take lodgings in the great detective's office's attic. I'm too overcome for words.
So suggesting we look elsewhere is out then.
Then it's settled. Iris will prepare a welcome dinner this evening. And you must come too, Mr. Natsume. I insist.
I don't know what to say, but thank you, and yes.
Wonderful. Then I'll go and complete the paperwork for your formal release, Mr. Natsume. It shan't take long.
Somebody's happy.
Locum, I knew that you wouldn't let me down. I am truly delighted to have met you here in London.
Likewise, Mr. Natsume. It's been a privilege meeting you, too. It's a shame that we're going to have to say goodbye so soon.
Well, I've come to realize that I belong in Japan. But Locum, we'll meet again one day.
Yes, I'm sure. And hopefully by then I'll be a successful lawyer.
Hopefully by then, I'll be a successful author.
Well, my dear fellows, our carriage appears to have arrived. Shall we go, Mr. Naruhodo?
Yes, Mr. Sholmes.
I have little doubt Mr. Natsume will be released in time for dinner this evening.
And so, with Soseki-san's innocence successfully established, we rode with Mr. Sholmes to what was to become our new home, 221B Baker Street. It's endless. It's a cute little attic, though. It's 4:41 p.m., the attic room. The shovel. And a window. So this
is to be our new office, yes.
Our office? I rather like the sound of that.
Me too. It's simply wonderful, isn't it?
I hope you can see this, Kazuma. It's only a small step, but I'd like to think we're getting a little closer to your dream now.
So, my dear fellows, do you like the place?
Excuse me? Hello? Ah, yes, Mr. Sholmes, thank you so much.
Oh, Mr. Sholmes, what? You look so good without your coat on. Oh my goodness, it's a delightful outfit. Room, Mr. Sholmes. I simply adore it.
Good, I'm pleased to hear it. Iris and I are delighted to welcome you.
I hope everyone's hungry. It's nearly time for dinner. We'll eat as soon as Mr. Natsume arrives. We have a lot to celebrate. Iris, you must let me help you. All right then, Susie. You can be in charge of the salad. I don't even know what a salad is. Splendid.
So, Mr. Naruhodo, how does it feel to have your own office in the capital?
It's very exciting, actually. I can't help wondering what adventures await us.
Those were precisely my sentiments when I first established my office at these premises.
This man needs to stop being so rude right now. Hello?
Until I discovered the dark truth about the city of London, that is.
Sorry?
London is a glorious place, full of wonder, opportunity, prosperity, Kermit the Frogs, and mirth. But the brightest of lights cast the darkest of shadows.
Shadows? What do you mean?
Well, I believe you're well aware of the murkiness that lies behind London's facade already. That Lord Chief Justice guy's kind of weird. So once again, Mr. Naruhodo, welcome to London.
Of course, at the time, I had no idea of the significance of those words Mr. Sholmes so casually spoke. But it wasn't long before my turn came to lift the facade and see the true depth of the murk that lay behind it. That's it. We're going straight for the head of the Hydra, Lord Chief Justice. We're gonna uncover what his shady shenanigans he's up to. Ooh, we achieved landed in London. Yeah, let's save our progress. Alright, what's the title of our next episode here? The Adventure of the Unspeakable Story Investigation Part 1. Alright, well you guys, that was a trial. And I called it nearly 2 hours ago, I want to say. I called it. Raleigh Beat moved the body because he wanted to go on a date. Be like, that's not my job tonight. Not tonight. So I was glad I predicted that. I also predicted that right at the beginning. I was like, she yeeted the knife out the window. And then I feel like we were meant to feel that way. And then, oh, but the scene wasn't there. So we have to figure out what's up with that. But then the scene was moved. So yes, I like the way this panned out. And hopefully the lady comes back to consciousness. Hopefully she's all right. Of course, it was an accident here. Definitely think there's way too many couples here that we've seen in The Great Ace Attorney that need therapy. A lot of violent couples happening. That's a bit odd. But I actually really enjoyed this episode. Didn't feel like it was 2.5 hours. I thought maybe once we did that, another cross-examination there, I was like, oh, maybe we'll take a break here. But that didn't last very long. And of course, we had all of our wrap-up at the end of the trial, so that did extend the video quite a bit. But yeah, I feel like this went by actually rather quickly. And it was nice to see that Van Zieks really is here for the pursuit of the truth. You know, he still thinks, you know, the easiest solution, which oftentimes the easy answer is just the answer. I mean, would you think that some lady, and there was a dude right behind her, and 2 people saw this dude right behind her, and she collapsed, had a knife in her back, and the dude ran off. Easy solution is that he stabbed her, right? Right? You can contrive all this other stuff. Oh, the couple upstairs had a fight, and the house burnt down. So it's because the house was burning, opened the window, and then the way that she threw the knife ricocheted off the pipe, off the window to fall straight into her back, because she happened to be coincidentally bending over to pick up the book at the exact same time. Like, that sounds like a load of BS. It just turned out, though, that's actually what happened. It's crazy. It's crazy what happened, but I do appreciate that Van Zieks was helpful on our side to pursue the truth and get Mrs. Gharadab on the stand. So that was really nice. Really appreciated that. And he thought it was cute, the couple. He was going to give Raleigh some lenience. I wonder what kind of pull he'll be able to have to get Raleigh away without being fired from Scotland Yard, without being fired for literally moving an entire crime scene. He's like, well, just leave, just leave. He's like, I'm not gonna just leave. Just you guys go home and have a nice time. And I was like, oh. I wonder what's gonna happen. I do think Van Zieks is in the next game, because that would be a plot twist if that's like the big thing. It's like if Lord Chief Justice Strong Sus murders Van Zieks. That would be a crazy case number 5 here, but I don't think that's gonna happen. That would be like Allie's extra wild prediction. I hope not. I hope not. I'm curious to see what Sherlock Holmes has to offer us in this next case. But I definitely think this is a pretty good resolution. There were no real shady characters here. Everybody seemed to be pretty good. Some of them quite annoying, but nobody particularly shady. But that does do it here for finishing up episode number 4 in-game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to go ahead and hit that like button. Comments for me, leave those down below. And of course, if you're not yet part of the Allie's Treasure Trove family, I'd love to have you join us. Make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, one thing I do have to check, I noticed at one point that the microphone was muted. I don't think, because I've been keeping an eye on it the whole time, just in case anything happens. I think I probably hit a button like real quick and fixed it. But if there is any less flowy voiceover, it's because I went back and read any parts that I somehow muted myself for. So I do apologize if that throws anybody off, but hopefully it was just, I didn't actually miss anything. I think when I went to inspect something, it hit it, and then afterwards I just submitted it. So we'll see, I'll have to double check that. So a little bit maybe extra editing on my part here tonight, but I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Now, of course, before I wrap it on up here, I do have to give a big shout out to all of my patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so much, you all, for going above and beyond with your support of me and the channel. I really, truly do appreciate it. Do have 4 Ultimate Excavators, Jack Perez, Keith Muna, Mako, and Stephen Olivo, 3 Gemstone Miners, Andon, Mark Mardini, and Stephen Bly, and 1 Crystal Collector of John Michek. But thank you so much again to all of my patrons, whether you're on a tier in which I say your name at the end of every video or not. I really, truly do appreciate it. So thank you so much for your support. Really, really, like I said, thank you so much. Yeah, that does it here. Definitely a long episode to finish off part 4. And we'll be starting investigation part 1 of the adventure of the unspeakable story next time. So thank you so much for watching, everybody. And I hope you'll join me as we crack into some more mysteries next time here on Allie's Treasure Trove. Take care, and hope to catch you in the next video. Bye!